Well, that was a movie.
Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Judas and the Black Messiah. Now, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it yet, you should stop this video, go watch it, come back, and we can talk about it then, because I am going to be getting into spoilers right away. Now, this is a true story, so you may already know the spoilers, but you might actually just not even know much about the true life story that this is based on. I know I didn't, so I had to go read about it after and before and during the movie, so you may have to do that as well. So, go do whatever you have to do and then come back and we'll talk about it. So, Judas and the Black Messiah, in case you don't know, is a true life story about an FBI informant being put into the Black Panther Party so that he can give information back to the FBI. This is obviously a political drama, so there's a lot of political opinions being stated and shown as fact. And for the most part, it does a really good job with that. It felt like, for the most part, this movie was being very honest, being very truthful, being factual with what it was showing, which is always a bit dicey with these political and historical movies. You never know exactly how biased it's going to be, but this felt, for the most part, to be pretty good, which is good. This movie did have a lot of input from Fred Hampton's son. He gave a lot of input. He was apparently on set every day. Now, Fred Hampton's son wasn't actually born yet when this movie takes place, so take that or leave it, take that for whatever it's worth, but they did do their best to try to make this as historically correct as possible. So, like I said, it's about the whole Fred Hampton situation. It's starring Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton, Lakeith Stanfield as Bill O'Neill, and it's also got Jesse Plemons in it, and Dominique Fishback, and it's got really, really good acting across the board. I think the only possible weak area, and it's not even a weak area, but Jesse Plemons, honestly, I just kept thinking the whole time, this could have been Matt Damon. Like, it felt like he was doing a sort of Matt Damon impression, and maybe he wasn't. Maybe he's just similar in appearance and acting style, and that's why I was thinking that, but he wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he didn't really stick out to me. Like, the one that stuck out the most, Lakeith Stanfield, I've been a fan of him for a while. Both he and Daniel Kaluuya ever since Get Out, but especially Lakeith Stanfield. I thought he was phenomenal in this. I thought he stood out. I thought he was great. But like I said, the acting across the board was really good. I also thought the cinematography, the directing, and the music all really stood out as well, especially the music. I am a sucker for a good score in a movie, but if you follow this channel, you notice I don't bring it up that often in my reviews. It's not something that I generally mention because I expect the music to be good. I expect the music to have a push, especially if it's something like, a Nolan movie. I expect the music to be in the forefront. I expect it to be good. I hope for it to be good. And when it is, I'm not disappointed, but I don't generally say much about it unless it stands out. This stood out. It was a very non-traditional score as well. It wasn't just the same score we hear in every movie. It actually kind of honestly reminded me a bit of The Third Man. Not that it was similar, but the way that it was non-traditional and used different kind of musical techniques to really convey different emotions. There was just one scene in particular that I think it was just, they had just a lone double bass or something like that. I'm not a musical expert, I don't know, but there was just this bass note just in this really intense moment that was just so well done and well placed. It was just a beautiful way to complete that scene, which is what really the score is there for, is to complete and fill out a scene, and the music really did a great job of doing that. So, of course, this movie is going to be hard to talk about without getting into the politics of it, so I will get that out of the way as soon as possible right here, right now. I'm going to preface that with, like I already had said, I didn't know much about the history of this. I didn't know much about this, so everything I do know is based on this movie and the research I just did while looking up this movie and checking how accurate it was, because that's something I do every time I watch a movie that's based on something historical. I always need to know how accurate is it, though. Are they trying to manipulate me, or is this actually true? And like I said, for the most part, it felt and seems to be very accurate. So I'm going to take this movie as if everything that they're saying is accurate. One of the biggest things that frustrated me about this, but was also good, was that This is obviously from the perspective that the Black Panther Party is good, which I think it's been misconstrued through different history that they were a terrorist organization. They never wanted to be labeled that. They never really represented themselves as that. They were anti-terrorist. They were anti-violence, but they were, as I understand it, once again, I'm very naive on this subject, but from how I understand it, they were trying to be peaceful, but they would defend themselves when necessary. That's why they carried weapons. That's why they dressed the way they did, as if they were almost a Green Beret or a military unit. So they weren't violent until antagonized. But some of the rhetoric in this movie really combats against that, really goes against that drive, that motto, because you've got Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Fred Hampton. He's giving several speeches, and at one point he has a speech where he says, kill a pig, get satisfaction. Kill a whole lot of pigs, get a whole lot of satisfaction. Something along those lines. Obviously referring to cops as pigs. And that is a straight violent rhetoric. That's not a good thing. That does sound terroristic. And so at one point, Lakeith Stanfield's character, who is on a wire at this point, this wasn't just his idea, he was trying to catch Fred Hampton saying something to give to the FBI. He's on a wire, he has C4, and he's offering it up to Fred Hampton, and he says, see, we could blow up Parliament with this. We could blow up the whole, maybe, I don't know, I don't think he said this specifically, but he implied, like, the police station or something. We could blow them up. Fred Hampton gets outraged at him, like, that's not what I could ever want to do. Because, once again, they're supposedly peaceful. And then he says, but you said kill the pigs. And he said, that's not what I meant. What did he mean then? And so there's some frustrating things in there where there's hypocrisy within the rhetoric. And I think if that is truthful, then this movie did a really good job of showing that, because there was a lot of inconsistency within the Black Panther Party in this movie of what their goal was and how to accomplish it. I don't think that's a fault of the movie. I think that's a good thing of the movie, because I don't like movies that try to portray things incorrectly and try to portray the heroes as completely perfect people. It's very obvious that the Black Panther Party and the main characters of this movie were the victims, except for Lakeith Stanfield. I mean, he's kind of a victim, but he's also the bad guy at the same time, but he's being victimized into a bad guy role. But regardless, it's very obvious that they're the victims here, because even though there is some corruption among them, the obvious bad guy and the obvious corruption is coming from the U.S. government here. They're obviously the bad guys here. So even though they're obviously portrayed as the good guys, it's not afraid to show the flaws in them, which is perfect. Because if you're trying to show me a historical moment, or literally any story, I don't want to see that perfect hero, because it's not believable. I immediately know you're lying to me. If it's a true story, it's no longer true, I know that. And if it's a fictional story, it's not believable enough for me to care. That's why so many people like Batman and don't like Superman, is because Superman is too perfect. He's too pretty. He's too just pure. Batman has some flaws. He has some weaknesses that you can relate to and you can understand, and it makes it feel more real. I know he's running around in a Batman costume. He's running around dressed up as a bat, but it's believable in its own way. And that's why I want my movies all to be like that, that you understand that nobody's perfect. Because then, when you admit your flaws, and you admit the flaws of the protagonists, I'm more likely to buy into and believe what you have to say. And this movie did a really good job of showing that nobody involved here was perfect. None of them. None of them were. And that's fine. I'm not perfect either. No human is. But as somebody who didn't know anything about the Black Panther Party before this, it did show to me that there was a lot of good that I was unaware of coming out of the Black Panther Party. In the community, feeding, I guess, homeless or just underprivileged kids, and just teaching. They had classes on politics, and he did so much. Fred Hampton specifically did so much to bring all of the gangs of Chicago together, to have pacts of peace, to come together and stop fighting, because it's true what he said, in that you will continue to be oppressed and continue to be in poverty if you're fighting amongst yourselves and ourselves. And that's just something that's so true, because when there's people in power, when there's a government in power that's trying to abuse those underneath it, the best thing for them and the worst thing for the people that are being abused is for them to fight amongst each other. It's the worst thing you can do, because you're taking away your own power, which the power lies within the people, and you're taking it away from yourselves so that you're helpless and powerless beneath the governmental power. And so obviously this movie has a strong racial stance, but it's also partially based on classism, because there are some groups that he combines with that are, I don't know what they were, like the white trash group or the white trash gang. I don't know who they were. They were like Southern. They had like the Southern flag and everything, and he wanted to come together with them as well and say, we all need to come together. We all need to pursue peace together. And there was a lot of really cool stuff that I didn't know personally. Maybe this is all old news to you. It was news to me. So I just wanted to mention that. It did a really good job of showing that as well. There was some weird things that I don't know if this was accurate or not, because one of the things that I did read was that the whole relationship between Lakeith Stanfield's character and Jesse Plemons' character was a little bit overemphasized for the sake of the movie. And their characters, I mean, you've got an FBI agent and the informant who's supposedly in the Black Panthers and supposedly has nothing to do with the FBI or the government, and they're seen eating out together at this really fancy restaurant constantly throughout this movie. Like, maybe that's really what they did, but it seems really stupid if that's what they did. Like, anybody could have seen them doing that. Anybody could have known immediately, oh, he's working with the FBI. So I feel like that wasn't real. I don't know that, but it was just silly to me. Like, why are you're supposedly undercover, you're supposedly working for the FBI, but don't want anybody to know, and you're out at a fancy restaurant with the guy. That's just stupid. I guess maybe it's not common knowledge that Jesse Plemons' character is part of the FBI, but it still looks suspicious. Like, everybody in the Black Panther organization is constantly on edge throughout the entire film, wondering who is an informant, wondering who's going to rat them out, because it's happened so many times and it's happening constantly throughout this movie. So being seen at a really fancy restaurant with some really fancy government looking guy, it was ridiculous if that's what he was really doing. So I hope for the sake of reality that's not what happened, but if and that's just movie magic, but if it is movie magic, it's dumb movie magic. So there was some issues like that. But for the most part, honestly, like I said, this movie was really well made, from acting to directing to cinematography to writing. There was, I know, several real-life quotes from Fred Hampton peppered in throughout this movie, and all of his dialogue, I don't know how much of it was real Fred Hampton quotes versus written dialogue, but that's my point, is you couldn't tell where the character of the movie started and ended versus the real Fred Hampton started and ended, because it was so seamless. The writing was so good, and all of these characters were so genuinely acted and so believable. Like, all of them. It was ridiculous. Like, it's rare that I watch a movie that I'm just completely bought into every character. The only time this really ever happens is when you've never seen any of the actors before, because that's just the character, because you don't know who the actor is. But like I said, I know who all of these actors are. Like Keith Stanfield, Danny Kaluuya, Jesse Plemons. They're all big name, famous actors that I've seen in multiple movies, and they're all just completely disappearing into these roles beautifully. It was good. It's not easy to watch. It's hard to watch. It really is, because there's a lot of depressing things about it. It's a hard watch because it's raw and it's real in a lot of ways, and it's one of those movies that you're not going to want to just sit down with your whole family and your little kids and be like, hey, let's watch a family movie together. It's not that. I mean, maybe you will want to show it to your kids, but I mean, parental discretion on that. In fact, I didn't actually watch the entire movie today. Part of that was me being busy yesterday with all the drama on YouTube. Like, if you know, you know. Ugh. But I did watch the first half yesterday, and I took a break and watched the second half today, because it's heavy. It's a lot, and it is a lot to watch and a lot to hear, especially if you're like me and you didn't know this story already. Granted, I knew stuff like this happened all the time. I wasn't shocked by anything that happened, but it's still heavy. So, yeah, I enjoyed this movie for as much as you could enjoy this movie. I was very excited for it because, like I said, I didn't know much about this, and I thought it looked really good, and there was a really good message behind it too, where there was a lot of correlations. Obviously, you can tell with the whole Judas and the Black Messiah thing. They were drawing obvious comparisons to Judas and Jesus Christ. If you don't know that, Judas betrayed Jesus and had him crucified. He sold him out for money, and that's the whole plot of this movie. And then they listed at the end, and the amount of money that Lakeith Stanfield's character did all of this for, he betrayed everybody he knew for, amounted to the same as $200,000 in today's currency, and that was it. And that really spoke volumes to me. That really, geez, it really is hard to watch. I wish they kind of showed a little bit more of the outcome, because they do have a title crawl thing at the end where they say what happened after the movie ends. And I guess they didn't really want to get too into the whole Lakeith Stanfield death thing. Bill O'Neill, after the fact, he committed suicide. And I don't know much about the story, but the first thing that I thought of when I read about it was, that doesn't sound like suicide. It sounded like he was killed. And they didn't bother talking about that, because I think it was one of those things to them that they didn't want to stake a claim on. They didn't know whether or not he actually killed himself or was killed. And so they very carefully, and I think smartly, stayed away from talking about it. And they just said that he killed himself because that's viewed as the truth. And I think that was smart, because even if that's not what happened, they didn't want to make any false claims and devalue everything else that they had said in the movie. And I think that was smart. I don't know if that's true, but they took the safe road on that, and I respect that. So it's on HBO Max. It's also in theaters. I recommend it to pretty much everybody. Like I said, it's a little harder to watch. It's a little bit much to take, but I think it's very appropriate at at this time and any time for pretty much anybody to see. It's very educational, and it's also just a beautiful film. It was so well made. Like I said, there's a couple of nitpicks you can have here and there, but what film doesn't? So I'm going to give it, I think, an 8. I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I think that seems fair, which is about what everybody else has been giving it, and the critics too. So yeah, good. Definitely a good, if not great, movie. That's what I had to think. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. Unless this video is not on YouTube, it's on Dailymotion, then don't leave it in the comments. If you don't know what I'm talking about, again, watch some of the videos I posted in the past couple days. I'll explain it. So hopefully this isn't an issue any longer. But until then, love you guys. Please follow me on Dailymotion, because I am going to be posting videos on there as well, because YouTube has been not allowing some of my videos on YouTube, which I think is completely unfair and uncalled for. So regardless, I'll have a link to everything down below. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.